Hello and welcome to Horizons, episode 87 review, and this episode is huge. I was assuming this whole last bit of the arc would be action, but this one isn't really all that, as the main focus is story and really zoning in on Gibeon, as the episode begins with him at Requiem lamenting what happened with Lucius, remarking how long it's been, how Lucius died and how Requiem is Lucius's grave, which now has an irony to it, and Zygarde starts calling out to reunite with its cells, becoming 50% once more. You can see how much Gibeon trusts Zygarde here as it reclaims its power. Gibeon calls it his trusted partner and tries to get up from his wheelchair, falling over and having to take a hit from Requiem to be able to get up and sustain himself. As you can see, he's artificially changed his body to take Requiem, connecting to sewing in his sleeve that goes through a tube in the spine on his head. It's honestly quite grotesque, but in a cool way, as he begins to get Zygarde to mine Requiem and Mephia approaches. It's quite a way to begin the episode, but after the opening, it keeps up the momentum by Gibeon dismissing the concerns that Mephia has, doubting Spinel wanting to betray him, saying stuff like Gibeon had orders to research into Requiem. Spinel is taking the initiative to use the extent of Requiem. I like the way Mephia tries to appeal to Gibeon, saying what happened to Umbreon, not wanting that to happen to Ceruledge, wishing to find another way to serve people and Pokemon, which Gibeon just calls pathetic and starts to mine for Requiem. Pretty cool of him to do that, but we cut to the heroes with Zoranconia distracting the explorers for the kids to get to Requiem. Spinel and Rise and Volt tacklers arrive at the site of Requiem, with Terapagos getting pissed. The kids get to finally see Gibeon as the Requiem comes up. They theorize that Rakua could collapse once more, and Spinel does his taunting, so Terapagos calls the heroes out, making them call out as well. Zygarde keeps digging seemingly at Gibeon's request, but smashes into Requiem, and in an amazing light we see a figure. It's Lucius, alive and in the flesh, making a cheeky little quip to Gibeon, and it turns out that Zygarde's betrayed Gibeon once again, as this was all part of the plan. There seems to be a really genuine moment where Gibeon's face really drops, like any strength or resolve, which I think is quite interesting, as of course he feels betrayed by Lucius, but they were friends, earning each other's respect before. Of course everyone is kind of shocked, and Horizon Attack was more so, as he names Liko without them introducing themselves, saying that he's pleased to meet her before greeting the heroes and Terapagos. And Spinel seems to want to start beef with Lucius, but Gibeon does cut him off. As Lucius addresses Horizon Attack by name, Fried asks how he knows that, and we get a pretty big lore dump that Zygarde's been showing him the whole goings on in the outer world while he's been stuck. I also really did enjoy him acknowledging how Roy obtained one of his ancient Pokeballs and managed to reach Rayquaza, basically confirming that Rayquaza has accepted Roy. When it comes from Lucius' mouth, it's pretty hard to say Rayquaza hasn't. A little moment of Roy fanboying about how much he's always admired Lucius was really sweet. So Lucius has managed to be aware of Horizon Attack and their adventures, and what Gibeon and his new explorers are up to because of Zygarde. Its cells stuck in Rakua, and around the world they used to monitor what Requiem had done to the world if anything. Zygarde sees Requiem as a threat because it's extraterrestrial, it's dangerous. What's particularly cool is that with Gibeon and Terapagos becoming active, Rayquaza leaving its ball, Zygarde had communicated with Rayquaza to find trainers that are worthy of Terapagos and the 6 heroes, and of course they were able to become those trainers. So yeah, Horizon Volt Tackler's adventure has somewhat been orchestrated by Rayquaza and Zygarde the whole time, which is an interesting twist, but I don't think that really does anything to impact the narrative so far, because if Liko and Roy didn't have a drive to go ahead and do what they have done in their pursuit of their dreams, they just wouldn't have been the trainers that Rayquaza and Zygarde wanted. There's still free will in them choosing to pursue this journey, and managed to get themselves where they are now. Lucius even mentions it is their own will. Rayquaza didn't help find the heroes because they had that stronghold to help Terapagos as it is, and it became their adventure, not Rayquaza's, giving them more strength, becoming more than Rayquaza had even bargained for. And Gibeon does ask, why let them free Requiem then? And it's because Requiem needs to be destroyed to end the threat permanently. And that annoys Gibeon, saying that, Requiem is his, it's a source of life, it'll let people and Pokemon live fuller lives. But with the way Liko saw it corrupt Spinel's Umbreon, she's not really sold on that one. Lucius does try and appeal because it isn't a natural threat, saying walking Pokemon create a link to the future generations, showing the heroes during this, which is fitting because Liko and the others have managed to connect with Pokemon Lucius were connected to. It lets them live on in a way without their expectation of them actually being alive. There's also a concern about getting rid of Requiem would destroy Rakua for Pokemon that managed to make their homes there. But it's becoming an independent ecosystem. Rakua will be fine, and Spinel being the funny guy that he is, says that it should be all good taking it then because, Rakua will be okay. But obviously the destructive potential of it is part of the concern. Trying to take it would activate Requiem, and the energy it releases is to try and prevent people from taking and using it, which leads into Mephia being quite rightly berating Spinel about wanting to use something that will send Pokemon berserk, with Spinel acting like they'll use it safely with research for a better world. But the way he talks, the way Fried looks at him, you can tell that he's just full of it. A world's new evolution Spinel prattles on about is nothing good. They want to exceed science, which just sounds dangerous. But Lucius trying to cut in and put Spinel in his place is hilariously cut off by Spinel saying they heard enough from him, and that Lucius is just a ghost trying to get Gibeon to not listen. If anything, Spinel's a comedy legend. I do find myself quite interested in how Gibeon responds to this whole situation, because after Spinel's speech saying that Lucius's words don't matter, he has this kind of somber look and has gotten really quiet. You can tell just how shaken this whole ordeal is making him. and he quite quietly gives Spinel permission to get on with the operation. The explorers have set out drills which Spinel's newly evolved Magnezone powers. The drills activate Requiem and start to power up, going for a core Requiem. And if that activates them, it really is dangerous as it can produce Requiem infinitely, with Spinel saying that Exceed can control it, which could just be hubris. As the Requiem activates, we get the effects. Trees overgrowing in an instant, and because Cap and Charizard were weakened by Spinel, they're immediately affected by the gas, taking each other out, which means Freed is not going to be a factor in any of the battles this arc. The explorers protect the drills too, as Amethia tries to destroy one. Sangus clearly blocks it, Agate taunts them. If I want to be nitpicky, I could say why isn't there more urgency in stopping these things? The kids have just put up a fight against these very admins, so they're just kind of standing here while this happens. So respect on Amethia for trying. But the 6 heroes are also here, you know. They just lost their trainer for 100 years and just kind of letting this happen. It's kind of weird that they don't, but I don't really think it's a huge issue, really. Lucius really does warn the end of the world again to Gibeon, and Gibeon just doesn't care. If people want to die for not using Requirium's power, that's on them. Those who do will live and go into the new age. Rayquaza comes down finally, and they start to do something about it, channeling the 6 heroes' power to Terapagos, who takes on its terrestrial form. You get some emotional part from Gibeon, declaring that he has put his whole life into dealing with Requirium, and despite this, Lucius and Ristal betrayed him, but not believing in the same potential. And while Lucius does say they didn't intend to betray him and treasured the time that they spent together, they spent more time talking to try and understand Gibeon, or come to more of an understanding in general, and even with an apology. And as much as that catches Gibeon off guard, even as his face softens, he's got to put on a strong face. He's finally at the cusp of achieving what he wants, and has to play it tough. Denying the apology as one last play, to try and make sure that he's not thwarted, and that is relying on Zygarde. So Zygarde is really interesting, and also funny here, as of course Zygarde has been against Requirium, trying to stop it 100 years ago and weakening itself, monitoring and helping Lucius with it over time, freeing Lucius to try and destroy Requirium once and for all, and even recruiting Lucius' Pokemon to come and find trainers who can help with this. But is Gibeon's partner. It's been with him for 100 years, which Gibeon is relying on. Zygarde is the only one he had throughout such a painful betrayal. He literally begs Zygarde to fight for him. And here's where the funny comes in, as Roy says that Zygarde won't fight for Gibeon, and Zygarde turns around ready to fight, which they're basically like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. It gave me such a good laugh, but it does feel a bit confusing as to why, considering what we know about Zygarde. So my theory here is that Zygarde sees this as a last-ditch effort to, convince Gibeon. There's already a lot of wavering conviction in Gibeon, little glimpses of weakness in him. So if Zygarde does fight all out for Gibeon here and still come up short, maybe Gibeon will realise the error of his ways. Just a theory, of course, but I think it would make Zygarde not seem a bit weird in doing everything to stop Requirium and then fighting for it. And with this upcoming battle, Amethia stands up to his grandfather first, not being deterred by Gibeon talking about how Amethia was supposed to inherit the Explorers, reinforcing he has to take his own path to protect Gibeon, and calls on the Rising Volt tacklers to help them all. All of them taking this battle seriously by not wasting time and terrestrializing their Pokemon immediately, and that's where we end this episode. I feel like I've gone through my thoughts as I've scripted out this review, but this episode was just incredible, filled with so much motivation and characterization for Gibeon. I feel like the series has gotten away with him not being present in the plot, and expanding on him here was a fitting place for it. But wow, I wish he was a major character now throughout the series, because he was stellar here, acting like he's got such strong resolve to fulfill his desires, especially when he's been betrayed to be quite stoked before. But having an underlying level of hurt from Lucius and Ristal not supporting him back then, has clearly affected him even 100 years ago. Hearing story from Lucius having an effect on him, no matter what he says, makes me somewhat sympathetic to him, even if his use of Requirium is wrong. I feel like now there is that sort of seed of doubt in Gibeon that could turn the tide in the battle, but also give Spinel a chance to act. So I'm very eager to see where that goes. And wow, how about the revelation that Zygarde really helped getting things into mission for our heroes, huh? The adventure being pushed on by the 2 legendary snakes is crazy, and feels really fitting for his Pokemon that should be at higher levels of power. I think putting a plot point like that in so late in the game feels like it could have made the whole adventure feel cheap. But I think put in a good way that it was a pretty selflessly motivated journey for our heroes. They didn't do the adventure because Rayquaza and Zygarde wanted them to. They did it because they wanted to help Terapagos and reach the heights they have on their own, leading to Rayquaza not really needing to be involved. Lucius being alive feels like a dream come true. He's such an awesome character to have on the side. And having that past story finally collide with the present, of course with Gibeon too, feels like we really come full circle in Horizons. Is this arc the end of the series? Probably not, but it would feel fitting. It's also quite heartwarming that he made good on the promise that he wouldn't die to his Pokemon. I assume he didn't know he'd be preserved in Requirium for 100 years. But Lucius feels like he's the type who would do anything for his Pokemon, and now he's been reunited with them, however long that'll be for. It's great stuff. Though he's also been watching over the kids as well is really nice. He experienced their struggles and triumphs, seeing them become the kind of heroes that he's needed to save the world. I've said a lot about this episode already, which hopefully tells you that I loved it. I think an episode like this rather than Climax could have hurt the pacing for the Battle of Rakua. But when you bring in an important character like Lucius into a modern story, hell, even properly expanding Gibeon, they need to have this kind of moment of a breather. The calm before the storm of the battle with Zygarde. This was a fantastic episode and made me even more excited for the kids to go up against Gibeon.